Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Katie Gideon, and I will be the on-camera facilitator for this Sunday morning weekly setup social. And as the song just said, I got you, we got you. My co-facilitator Maya is in the chat, and we are so excited to work out our weekly setup pages with each and every one of you so that we can get ready for the week ahead. I am dialing in from Edinburgh, Scotland. I am back in the UK after spending 3 wonderful weeks back in Oklahoma for the holidays. It was a great break. It was really nice. I stayed with my parents and we had a really lovely time. But I am definitely excited to be back in my own space, setting up and working through the rest of January. So, welcome. I am starting to see a lot of names in the chat that I recognize. Welcome to all of our returning socialers. And with it being a new year, new month, we get a lot of new people. So we would love to hear if this is your first social, your first weekly social, or maybe you took a little bit of a break and you're back after kind of a hiatus. So if you want to talk in the chat, make sure it is set to everyone. If it is set to just hosts and panelists, that comes to myself and Maya, and we would absolutely love to answer all those questions. But if you want to just share with the larger group, just double check that it is set to everyone. It does go back and forth sometimes. Mara, welcome for your first social. I will give you a little bit of a heads up. Socials can be a little bit of a sensory overload, not in a bad way, but just it is. The chat may be going a little bit quickly, so there is a little bit of a cadence that just takes some practice and some rehearsing. So you can obviously always pause the chat. If I am too much, you can mute me. You can mute the music. If you just are here for examples, you can make sure you have maybe your phone ready or your screen grab captures ready to go, because we have a lot of great examples in the slides. And if you need us to go back to some of those examples, let us know. Or maybe you're here to just work on your journal, so you just kind of mute all of that because this is that hour that you've set aside to yourself to get yourself prepared for the next week. However you choose to spend this hour, we are just glad that you're here. We're glad that you come exactly as you are, and we are so excited to get started. So, as always, be kind and courteous to yourself and others. No promotions or spam. Please respect everyone's privacy. No hate speech or bullying. Limit repetitive product and accessory questions, though we do like to talk about stickers here. And if you do have some of those questions, you can certainly send those to myself and Maya, but we will most likely redirect those customer care inquiries to our team, hello@silkandsonder.com, because while we have some information, we don't have a lot of the specifics, but we love to use this opportunity to highlight some of those questions that we can then feedback as well. And as always, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you are responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. So while we absolutely love celebrating everybody's wins, everyone's positive days, everyone's good things, there are times where those are some kind of, you maybe didn't have a great day, maybe you didn't have a great week, maybe you're just in one of those kind of challenging times. If you need to set up some of those emotional barriers or some of those emotional boundaries, we are here to provide support and inspiration and work through these pages, but it shouldn't be to the detriment or triggering of your self-care journey. So we always ask, take a deep breath, give yourself some grace, but take what you need from this space. And sometimes if you just need to color, flip over to that coloring page and do it. If there are questions or prompts in here that you're not quite ready to answer, because I am fully aware it is early in the morning, then you can just write them down and come back to them during the week. Because again, no one is grading you. No one is looking over your shoulder and seeing how much you have done in your journal. It's just to kind of take what you need, take what you can use, what do you need this week, and then move forward with it. So we are still embracing this month's theme of prosperity. And I did one of the monthly setups, and I realized that I didn't know the definition of prosperity outside of context clues. And I've just had a really tough time separating prosperity from just kind of that definition that I had. So I have reframed it. And so this theme for the month theme for me, another word for prosperity is wholeness. So I have been trying to pursue wholeness instead of perfection. And it just kind of dives really deeply into the concept of I kind of went back and forth for my word of the year, which I think it's going to be kind of a back to basics. And so it's more of this back to this wholeness, kind of finding all of these pieces. I've had a lot of newness, I've had a lot of changes, and now I need to settle in to build up that confidence that I know I have, expanding on those skill sets that I can now embrace under these new conditions and kind of follow this idea of a calling. So that's why I'm kind of going back to basics to help with this wholeness. And that's kind of not only going to be my focus for this year, but definitely the focus for this month, which is again, that wholeness. So I would love to know in the chat if any of you have had to kind of reframe the theme of prosperity, or if you were like, prosperity is my game. I get it. We're going with it and we're running with it. Because I always like the different interpretations. And so, kind of with that thought, we're going to move into the agenda, which we're going to go to the week 3 of our prosperity mind map. We're going to do that wonderful rosebud thorn reflection, and then we're going to move into those weekly setup pages. So for the prosperity map, this is not something that's printed in the journal. We go back and forth with whether or not to print it in the journal, but there's almost like a kind of unique creative element that we like with designing the mind map that can be really special. So if you hadn't set up your mind map, you can turn to a blank page. You can also just find like a blank spot in there because maybe not all the questions really resound with you, but you want to kind of do some of these. But the mind map is what we do in the weekly setups as a way to dive a little bit deeper into the prompt. So remembering that the word prosperity often conjures images of wealth and material success, but true prosperity encompasses a much richer tapestry human experience. So we want to dive a little bit deeper into that understanding, expand some of those ideas of prosperity. And at the same time, if you don't have the answer this morning, that is fine. Just write down the question and you can come back it through the week. And as always, these are weekly setup staples that we do at the beginning. So if you miss one, if you show up a little bit late, we always include the previous weeks. But just because we include the previous weeks, and maybe this is your first time joining a social, don't feel like you have to catch up. Just kind of use what you need of those prompts or how you want to do that. So we had week 1, which focused on kind of the word prosperity and its meaning to us. Then we shifted into week 2 with how does that align with our current values and goals, and maybe identifying some of the discrepancies. We're now going to take that a little bit further and reflect on a time in your life when you felt truly prosperous. Even if it wasn't a period of financial abundance, what contributed to that feeling of prosperity? And so now we're going to kind of turn it into a living, breathing example of all of these things. And if you need to, again, redefine prosperity, you can do that. And I've also included a couple other examples and a couple other questions that I found helpful as I was looking at this. Because you could focus on a very specific area of your life. Maybe it's a specific relationship, maybe it's a specific intention area, maybe it's a focus on your, social aspect, your mental aspect, physical aspect. But it also could be an event, a relationship, an achievement, or even just a mentality when you felt kind of that prosperity. And then I started to kind of think about it a little bit more, and mine took maybe a slightly darker turn, which is fine. I feel like that's why we're here, to reflect on some of those good, bad, and everything in between. But the question kind of I came up with after I kind of answered this in my own thought was, what may have changed or shifted to move away from that feeling? Because that's where I feel like I kind of fell a little bit into. And so, what would you need to achieve that feeling either for the first time or maybe achieve that feeling again? And so, you can put this into a letter to past you or future you as a mini pep talk to add to that feeling. So, when I said I took kind of a little bit of a dark turn, my example is the one on the right from the previous weeks, but I went back and thought to when did I truly feel this kind of overabundance of wholeness and maybe even identity wholeness. For me, it was kind of right out of college. It was my first job right out of college. I had this sense of just like, I'm going to call it oddly placed confidence, or just like strongly placed confidence that I feel like you have in your mid 20s. And so I had been able to make a lot of these really positive decisions. I had very much control of where I wanted to go, what I was going to be doing. And I really had great opportunities. I met some amazing people. And then I feel like there was that independent growth that I benefited from. And then I also realized that was before just some like difficult disappointments. So it was realizing that I had all this wholeness and the completeness. And I know that there are still pieces and parts of it there. They've just lost that little bit of sparkle and shine. So I think it was just like the narrowed down to, did I just hit on what happens is like you're no longer jaded as you just get a little bit older. But it's now back to some of those basics and fundamentals for me. So I think it kind of reiterated it. And even as I was telling Maya, I kind of read the question instead of prosperous, I said it as preposterous. So I feel like that was like future kind of showing me where my answer was kind of going to go. But that was kind of the direction I went. It took a little bit of an interesting turn, but I think it makes sense with the headspace that I'm currently in. So I would love to hear in the chat if you wish to share those times when you felt truly prosperous, or what pieces can you pull together for that? And so I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to turn on some music, and we'll see you soon. Thank you everybody for sharing. And I know this one was I found a little bit trickier than I originally thought. You know, sometimes I read the questions, I was like, "Oh, this will be fine. This will be no big deal." And then when I sit and start thinking on it and writing, it's like, "Okay, that was not what I expected, but it was certainly maybe more of what I needed." So did see a lot of very key events in people's lives that kind of happened, and I think what's really nice is then being able to describe it in very kind of that full detail and vivid remembrance of it. But then seeing kind of all feeding into kind of, as I said, like a wholeness or a completeness, which again is a little bit of that subtle change from prosperity. And I know Maya included some other concepts around prosperity that you could think of. And as always, if you got a little stuck or didn't quite maybe come up to the full answer, that's perfectly fine. You can come back to this question kind of throughout the week. And then sometimes I'm always pondering a little bit when it comes to the mind map of what do I do with this information. And sometimes I have kind of the next steps right away because it all links to kind of where I'm going or where I think I'm going or where I'm headed. And then there are times I think with like, but this particular theme that I don't really have an answer to solve any of these things, but I appreciate that I reflected on them and I can come back to them and pull them in those other things because maybe the solution isn't readily available right now, but maybe it's this thought that I needed to get out and put down and start to kind of turn into something else or build on something else. So that's what I always think is another kind of really special thing about the mind map is sometimes it feels like you're just answering a question, but it can be used kind of in future references or maybe that very next reference, or maybe it's just like I said, not the theme, not not the vibe, not the kind of area you're wanting to explore, but being able to put it down there and give it an opportunity for reflection, I think is always great. So we are now going to move to page 44 in your January journal for the Rosebud Thorn reflection. And so this is your opportunity to look back on the past week and acknowledge those highs and lows and everything in between. Because we are on this wild roller coaster of our lives each week. And sometimes it's good to celebrate the wins. There's definitely some value in there. So it was a quote that I found where it was like, how often do you celebrate your wins? How do you cheer yourself on? And it just hit me that then I move on to the next thing just so quickly. So this is that take a moment to acknowledge all that you've done, this year to celebrate yourself. Use that time now to celebrate each week that you've made it through another week, but to kind of celebrate a win, but also acknowledge a thorn. And then maybe something to get excited about because you can use these kind of in a similar start, stop, and continue to pull forward into your weekly pages, or you can just acknowledge them, put them out in the world, relieve some of that pressure and burden, and then move on to the next week with a completely clean slate. So rose is going to be something that went well, a win, a highlight, something that made you smile, something that made you happy. I participated in a Rewrite Your 2025 Story workshop with the main character club that I've joined over here in Scotland. They have a little bit of an international reach, but very much based in Scotland. And so we went through the hero's journey with kind of journal prompts and those type of things, identifying, when you're feeling as more of the extra in the story, when you're feeling the main character. And so it gave me some other really good things to think on as I kind of explore the wants, the needs, where I want my area to go. So very similar to kind of what we're doing here, but a slightly different twist. And I always love different perspectives. Always trying to get better at just journaling and facilitating and all those things. So I really enjoyed it. Bud is going to be something that is an emerging opportunity, something you're looking forward to, something that is on the horizon that you don't quite know if it's going to be a rose or a thorn. Could be a combination of the above, but you need to kind of maybe push it in a certain direction so you can take that control now. I have been a part of a drama group for about a year now. And so our next session is starting up and I'm really excited about that. It's a great group of friends that I have found. So that starts up on Tuesday and they make me happy. It gets me out of my house and hanging out with really fun people. And then the thorn, that's going to be a challenge, something that didn't go so well, something that was maybe a bit of a downer, a roadblock, a speed bump, or maybe something that's just taking up a little bit too much time, energy, or mental space that you maybe don't want it to. So right now I'm still kind of battling a sore throat. I was never really sick. I did get a handful of vaccines when I was back in the States, but it's just not quite at its full force and strength, which always frustrates me a little bit. You know, you'll be in mid conversation with someone and then it'll just disappear and you're like, great. So now they wonder if I am sick and all those things. So battling the sore throat. So I would love to hear your rosebud thorns in the chat if you want to share, because as always, we want to celebrate those roses, get excited for those buds, but also hold space and support for some of those thorns. And we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And what I do think is really kind of an added bonus of these socials is that when we do work on some of these reflections, maybe it's not someone going through exactly the same thing, but just feeling a little less alone in kind of navigating some of these thorns and getting excited about the roses, with all those type of things. So I just find it a little bit of that kind of special moment of for you, it's very much internalized with your kind of reflection on your week, but being able to share with our Sonder fam is always like that little added relief of, I think I can do this. I think it's going to be fine. And knowing that there are other people out there that are kind of navigating similar things and those type of things. So I love that connection that is then built through all of these just with that kind of rosebud thorn reflection. So thank you everybody for sharing. So now we are going to turn to page um, 46 and 47 in your January journal. These are going to be those weekly pages that we're going to talk about. And so we'll go through to set those up. And as I always like to reframe this is there is no right or wrong way to journal. There is no right setup. There is no wrong setup. Sometimes just going back to asking yourself, what do you need this week? There are times where I need to repurpose this to get what I want out of my week. And there are times I need to, again, go back to some of those basics and work as it is exactly as listed. So do not feel like that you're not doing something right. If you get a little lost or it gets a little overwhelming, sometimes again, asking yourself, what do you need this week? And sometimes what you need is maybe not filling out every single section. Sometimes what you need is putting together all the sections that they can then be connected to help build on that type of success. Sometimes it is just taking a little bit of a break from some of those sections, which I know sounds a little counterintuitive, but sometimes that is really what you need to build either that inspiration or that kind of newer connection. And at the same time, we are breaking up with perfection. So just because it seemed like a great idea now does not mean it's going to be the solution come Wednesday or Thursday. So you can always cover it up with a sticker, do something different, take a little bit of a pivot, or wait until the next week and you get to start something new each and every time. So we're going to start at the top of page 46, which this week I want to feel. The way I always frame this is, how do I want to feel this time next week? I like to take a little bit of ownership and maybe put out into the world where I would like my week to be, and then build all those pieces around it to help me achieve that. I am definitely very goal-oriented, type A personality driven. So if I have a goal, so when I am experiencing the roller coaster of the week that I'm going to have, I can always come back to this center concept or go back to this end idea to help me navigate my week. And so some people, again, the way they want to feel this week is maybe 1% better. Maybe they want to feel more something or less something. Maybe it's a specific definition of a word. Maybe it's a phrase. Maybe it's a quote. Maybe they just want to be cozy and warm, like the really lovely hot chocolate at the top. Maybe it is a little bit more themed. I liked the choose to see the good stuff. I thought that was a really great take on it, and especially with stickers. And so sometimes it is just a sticker. Sometimes it is an idea. Sometimes it's your word of the month. Sometimes it's your word of the year. But just take a quick minute if you want to put in the chat how you want to feel this time next week. And we'll see. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And again, with that kind of cadence, I will go through the slides just to talk through them. But then when the music comes back on, I'll go back. So just let us know if we need to go back to different slides. But don't worry, you'll get to see all of the examples. So now that we have this idea of how we want to feel this time next week, we can now help support that with our three major goals and our weekly to-dos. So I approach the major goals as more of the mental and emotional reminders to give myself to make it through that week. So they tend to be really broad. They don't tend to change too much because a lot of it is just like breathe, rest, take a moment, be present, kind of some of those very general reminders to myself. But other ways you can approach this section is again, maybe you want to categorize it. Maybe it's a professional, a mind, a body. The one at the bottom, they wanted to feel happy that week. So they wanted a happy mind, a happy body, and a happy soul. Maybe it's more of your three favorite quotes. Maybe it's just three things you need to get done, three things that you want to get done, three inspirational kind of areas you want to do. I also liked the idea of the movie, shows, books, and creative projects, just those kind of three acknowledgement things. Maybe it is a bingo. We love a good bingo board. You'll see a lot of those as you go through. And again, it's just a gamification of the things that you want to do. We also are big fans of alliterations. So maybe it's a productive, a peaceful, a powerful, a frog, fun, and fierce. Maybe it's your three goals that you want to accomplish every single day. So you have one in the morning, in the midday, and the evening. And then some, again, directly tie those to-do lists with those categories of their major three goals. So they've broken down their major three goals into the exact tasks or to-dos that they want to do to support that. And sometimes, again, it's just a let go, leap into a learn. Maybe it's more of the stop goals, or maybe it's a completely repurposed section with the routines or a morning self care. Or maybe this is where your to do lives because you like the graph paper design instead of just the blank page. So I would like to hear if you want to share in the chat, what are your three major goals this week? Are they major goals? Are they minor goals? And just because we say three doesn't mean you need to use three. Maybe it's just one thing because you're coming off of an illness and it's just to get better. Maybe you are going on vacation and you just want to have fun. So there are just a couple different ways that you can look at this. So let us know and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And I was already starting to see some people kind of making that shift of connecting their goals to their weekly to-dos. But that's just kind of one approach, doesn't mean it's the only approach, because some people certainly treat this a little bit as a to-do or a ta-da. And so they can either go hand in hand or they can be kind of kept separately. And so you can certainly treat this as, again, a to-do list, a really great place to kind of jot down all those things you need to do to support those goals that you have to feel the way you want to feel this time next week. I am more of a ta-da fan. I like the celebration of it. It's just that kind of mental shift of instead of writing it down ahead of time, I do have a lot of those to-dos already in my head or kind of placed elsewhere. And so being able to then carry them over as already done, I think it's really great. I love the party associated with it. But then I have also found that with the to-dos, I jump back and forth with a bunch of different techniques. And usually that's how to actually get my to-do list done. Because sometimes I have a lot of really random things. And so the Eisenhower matrix can be really helpful with that do, decide, delegate, or delete. However, I live alone. I do not delegate anything, or I need to delegate things, but it's not as simple as that type of thing. So I've had to get a little bit creative with delegation. So, there are times I'm not in the mood to cook or clean or any of those things. So I've certainly delegated that to restaurants before, obviously. And so that's been a really helpful thing. And same thing with I don't delete anything. It eventually has to get done. I'm just going to delay it. And then the Pomodoro technique, I think, is also really great. I was chatting with my sister when I was back home, and she has discovered the Pomodoro technique and thinks it's like the greatest thing ever. But she didn't really call it that. She was just like, oh, I've been doing this thing where I set a timer and then I work for a little bit and then I take a little walk and a break. And I was like, oh, Pomodoro technique. And she's like, oh, it's a thing. I was like, yeah, it's definitely a thing. It's a proven scientific thing that's really great. So even just shifting or like changing up your routine can be what kind of propels you to kind of get over some of those to-dos that have just been on your list for a while. And even breaking it down into like your self and home work categories. Again, maybe it's a combination of the ta-da bingos. When I do always say if you include a bingo in your to-do list, don't forget the things that you have to do that someone else has suggested that you do because that's still your time, whether how you choose to use it or not. Sometimes it's also just recategorizing or reprioritizing what you need. So breaking them down into calls, errands, follow-ups, scheduling. Maybe you have different to-dos for each day, so breaking it up into the 7 days of the week. Or also even sometimes just here are the things that you need to do, here are the things that you want to do, and here are the things that you would hope to do. And then maybe you have just had a little bit of a rough go. And so tracking all your happy thoughts, the things that make you smile, or even just the friendly reminder to think of those things. I also liked the idea of don't do this, but do this instead. So a little bit of that mindless scrolling, a little bit of, those type of things, maybe instead of doing that type of thing, this thing. Bridget, I love that you mentioned the weekly glimmers. Glimmers are those opposites of triggers. So those are the things that make you happy, make you smile, make you take that moment of just satisfaction and inspiration. Maybe again, you need more of those to be reminders. Maybe it's a weekly wins. And then I liked, again, breaking down your to-do list into work and personal, but then breaking it down even further with that need and the want. Or again, maybe it's a not to-do list. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this, but would love to hear your weekly to-dos, what's on your list. And I've always found a struggle a little bit of having kind of the same to-dos week to week. So I'm always looking for tips to motivate me to get those off my to-do lists. So we'll see. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I loved seeing the subtle adjustments or the things that kind of need to change. But I think this again is one of those sections that for me for sure changes week to week. And sometimes it's just I got to try a slightly different technique to kind of either trick myself or motivate myself to do something a little bit different. Even though I do consider myself a bit of a creature of habit, which is now moving into that habits and activity section, or as the word that Maya coined, which was habities. So we love our habities. And so we incorporate those into our week as well because we overlay those with our to-dos and our goals to help us feel the way we want to feel, because a lot of times these are things that are still going to take up some of the time that we have this week. And so being able to focus a little bit on some of those things that we want to do, some of those things we maybe want to stop, or even again, some of those reminders that we maybe have or need. I incorporate this with my monthly habit tracker. I bring the same three that I have had since honestly, it seems like day one. Very much my top three habits are always move, journal, and read. I then bring them into my weekly habit activity tracker with those things, but I overlay the reality. And that's what does my workload look like? What do my hobby schedules already have? So if I have a lot of things that I have coming up or things that I'm choosing to participate in coming up, it'll impact how much time I can set aside for reading and journaling and moving in those type of things. So I add that lens of reality just so I can set myself up for success in accomplishing these things. And sometimes that's adding a goal, sometimes it's not including a goal. Sometimes if you're on vacation or work travel and it just becomes a little bit overwhelming, maybe it's just adding in those stickers. Being able to break it down into your weekdays versus your weekends, because some of those habits and activities will occur on different days. And just because there are 5 lines listed does not mean you need to do all 5. Maybe you just need to do 3. Maybe it's 2. Maybe it's 1. Maybe it is just general reminders. Maybe you break them up into categories. So you're going to do something for your self-care, home care. You're going to do something for work and kind of do it that way. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is also a really good concept. And then I am a big visual. I like the iconography of it. So I always like to include something fun, something different, something kind of out of the ordinary for those habits and activities each week. And so I always look for the fun inspirations with the iconography there. So I include that. And same thing with if anyone's on a particular journey, I am always big into the sustainable produce and those type of things. So I think that's always a fun thing to include, especially if you're looking for new recipes, new things. These are going to be ready available, and I always like to see what shifts. So these are the now new produce. Welcome to some of the more fruits like the winter, surprisingly. And then same thing with there are quick ways to be kind to yourself, broken down with how much time you have within that week. And again, maybe some of those slow living ideas. But I would certainly like to know what habits and activities you are working on, and how you maybe connect it to your monthly habits, or maybe you don't connect it at all. But we again are on that bottom of page 46, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And Norma does bring up a good point. This is a really good section to focus on either something specific. Someone mentioned earlier that they are looking at just their evening routine, or maybe it is a morning routine, or this can be a little bit of a cheat sheet or a little bit of leaving yourself some breadcrumbs to check back into those other pages within the journal. So maybe check in with the habit tracker, sleep tracker, gratitude log, coloring page, or even prompts. So if you found it a little bit tricky to kind of go back through the journal to connect all these pieces together, this is a great place to kind of include that as a little bit of a reminder. And so now we're going to flip over to page 47. This is the section that I always consider one that gets heavily repurposed for whatever everyone needs. They're great templates. For me, this is lovingly the B side. Treat it as a record. The first page that we just did, that's the A side. I listen to that all the time. I use it all the time. B side has some real gems when I need it, but it's really not something that I do on a pretty regular basis. But if you do use it, you can use it for a meal plan, for those type of things. And then maybe it's one good thing for that week. Maybe it is a meal plan in real time that you fill out with what you've consumed. If you're on that type of journey, maybe this is more of where your appointments and to-dos live. Maybe it's more of a meal plan for the soul. So this is where you focus on those daily reflections, daily affirmations, daily ritual responses, or even just kind of questions to ask yourself during the day. What are your priorities? You could also connect this back either to the theme or your word of the month or your word of the year. Maybe it's more of a clothing tracker because you're heading out on vacation or traveling for work. Maybe it's just where you put your highlights or your to-dos for the day, maybe something else a little bit more creative. The mind body health plan is also something that gets repurposed a bit. And that's where you can again include maybe it's a different theme for each day. I like the idea of asking yourself, what do you feel? So this is what you need. You can do that either at the beginning of the day or the end of the day to kind of help connect some of those feelings and actions together. Maybe it is just a highlight of the day. Maybe this is where you do a cleaning log, a reading log. Maybe it's more of the daily plans of how you want to spend these, focusing in on the routines. Maybe you're looking at those 7 types of rest. I always like, again, things to smile about. The advice from a snowman I thought was really fun. And then you have the shopping list, which again can be used as a shopping list to help support that meal plan. Or maybe it's a don't shop list, the buy, don't buy. A lot of people do use this for other rituals. Bingo boards that I think look really great here. Someone recently posted a cozy bingo board, which I thought was really fun. And again, maybe this is like a check-in, social check-in. Don't buy. Maybe it's more of a what you're watching, reading, listening, just some quotes or just like a little space to kind of put some thoughts there. So I'm going to give you some time to kind of wrap up this page, and we'll see you for the closing, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody. As always, where does the time go? But the very last section is the I am loving, which gives you an opportunity to just write down what is making you smile, what is making you happy, what are you loving. If you want to share in the chat with what you're currently loving, we always like to see that. And speaking of currently, page 39, Maya and I are big fans of the currently page. We were seeing some discussion in the app of kind of how to fill this out. What do we do with it? I am a big fan of this because, again, I'm a big book reader, big bookworm. I love telling stories. I love hearing about stories. So I treat this a little bit as a story because there are 3 lines. So I fill it out at the beginning of the month, the middle of the month, and the end of the month, just so I can see what type of story with my beginning, middle, and end did my month have. So I highly recommend it if you haven't tried this page, just because I know it's big and scary with not a lot of instructions. It's actually a really, really fun just snapshot to kind of see where you've been, where you're going, or what you're doing. And I think it's just, again, a fun little, I always equate it with like people asking, what's your favorite color or what's your favorite animal? Those type of just really fun questions that you can get excited about. Um, but with that being said, it's been a wonderful time with each and every one of you here. As always, we would love to see your weekly pages if you want to share them in the Silk and Sonder app. You guys provide such amazing examples. That gets overlaid with some of the facilitators, Owen, as well. So you guys provide so much inspiration and such great ideas. So, and then as always, if you have not looked into the personalized coaching for the 24/7, it's an amazing feature. If you have any questions about any of it, please, please, please reach out. They will answer everything. And because it's still in beta mode, they're wanting your feedback. They're wanting all of those responses. So if you're even remotely interested, just ask the questions. Reach out at that concierge at hello@skillsandsolder.com. You can do all of those, but ask. Trust me, ask. It's an amazing thing. And if it genuinely fits into your life, highly recommend it. This is a copy of my playlist. I will include the link in to the Spotify one there. And again, thank you so much for spending your Sunday morning with us. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your weekend. You guys are going to have an amazing week as we are almost done with January, which I feel like goes by so quickly. But we are going to have a great week. I hope to see you at future events. You guys have a great time, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Oh, it's been a while since I saw the smile on your lips. But honey, I've been feeling that something's gonna go our way. It might be a year from now, or maybe a couple days. You might be feeling down, but that feeling's gonna change. Ah, honey, something's gonna go our way. I know that it ain't always easy, and it's okay if we take it day by day. I think that the world might call us crazy, but someday soon something's gonna go our way. Go our way. Yeah, I can feel it in the air, down in my bones and everywhere. I don't know when, but God, I swear something's gonna go our way. Ah, honey, something's gonna go our way. Ah, honey, something's gonna go